Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's demonstration is going to be a time lapse of a painting of the canal using the water mixable oil paints. So these ones I'm using are the Daler Rowney Water Mixable oil paints that I've used before. And I just really want to talk through a few things that I found whilst I was doing this, a few mistakes I made that I wouldn't do next time. Or, you know, it's always great to look back in hindsight, and especially when I'm editing the videos and I'm looking at myself doing it and I think, why did I do that and why didn't I do the other? So, you know, it's good to look back. Now, those of you that are regular to my channel will know I do all sorts of media, and I really, in my own work, mostly do mixed media, so I'm very familiar with using inks, brush show and watercolour, and I'm not as familiar with using the oils, although I have been using oils more in my own work over the last few months. So if you do want to see some of that work, you can follow me on Instagram at Lawson Art, for those of you that are on Instagram, and you'll see what I mean about sort of moving away from some of the mixed media more into oil, but I'm still enjoying doing my mixed media as well. So what I'm saying really is that it's all still a learning curve for me as well as for you using these water mixable oils. So today I'm not adding anything to them at all, I'm just using them neat from the tube, and that's meaning I'm having to work them quite hard into the paper because it's got quite a grain in it, this paper, so it's sort of like a canvas paper almost. It's a Winton one from Winsor and Newton, so it's just called oil paper or something like that from Winsor and Newton, and it's just a small piece of paper that I've taped to the board there, and I've also taped the photograph to the top. So this photograph I will link below in the description. It's a photograph I took near home myself, probably not this spring, I think it was the year before, and we've got a lovely reflection under the bridge there, but we can also see the far bridge, and I'm trying to omit some of that detail in my painting because that makes it very, very complicated when you're working in oils and in just the one brush, because I'm not moving my brush at all, I'm just using this same brush all the way through. And the thing about it, it's a Royal Taklon brush, just a synthetic one, and it's a flat one. And the thing about using a flat brush is you can do your drawing with it, you can use the very end or the corner of it to get finer detail, and then you can use the whole brush to add more paint all at once, and it's quite good now and again to do a full painting using one brush. Having said that, I use a second brush to do you know, some blending. So the second brush I keep clean all the time, I keep dry rather, so I'm just wipe that off in between blending the different colours and keep it nice and dry. This brush, I do wash it in between colours using these water mixable, because that's the idea with the water mixable oil paints, is that you can wash your brushes in water. So a word of caution with that is whenever you wash your brush between colours, make sure you dry the water off. You can end up, if you've got just a tiny bead of water on the shaft of your brush, and then that goes down onto your painting, that's not great. It can make it look a little bit dull where the water's gone down onto your painting, so you need to lift that off, but just be aware of that to dry your brush off in between. Another thing I've realised as a relative newcomer to oils is that there's a very big temptation to over blend. If you enjoy blending the colours together wet in wet on the paper, the temptation can be to over blend them and end up losing some of those nice lines that you had earlier. So just try not to over blend your paint, because you can always come back to it, and that's the great thing about oils, because they stay wet for a lot longer than your acrylics or your watercolours would. You can come back to it and blend it later, but just try not to blend all those colours away and make mud. So in hindsight, I perhaps should have put a ground on this little picture. It would have been quite nice to paint the whole thing with something bright like a yellow ochre to begin with. I did the actual drawing in yellow ochre, and then I've just used the colours that I actually have in that little Georgian set that I bought to begin with. I have added one or two colours to it, but I could do with more colours really. I'm not overly happy about the sky colour and the colours in general that I chose for this picture, but it does end up making a pleasing little picture, even though it's not representative of the colours that are in front of me. So I was really looking at the tones. You could perhaps go a little bit darker down the right hand side, but I thought maybe it makes it look a little bit too gloomy if you go just as dark as it is there. So we think about painting water, and I have done some videos in the past about water, but when we think about the sea and lakes and rivers, we've nearly always got ripples that are going to make it a lot easier to make it look very obvious that it's water. In this particular photograph, it's almost just like a mirror, because it's so calm, the canal is so flat, it's just like a mirror. There's not even any of the sky colour actually in the water. I did put some of the blue in the water because I did feel that it made, you know, the painting itself more harmonious, bringing the colour from the sky around to the bottom of the painting. But actually, if you look at the water, it is very, very flat and mirror-like. So to get it so we know it's a canal, the bridge is going to help. Keeping that flat feeling is going to help, so keep your brush going either vertically or horizontally, very, very flat across and very smooth, but also get those dark colours underneath the edge of the canal towpath to get that distinction between where the towpath finishes and the canal, the actual water starts. And then we've got some reflections there as well. Once again, I've left it quite loose and not too detailed. But if you look on the left hand side of the picture, those reflections are very, very detailed, so you could spend a lot of time doing that if you wanted to. And if you're not into oil painting, of course you can do it just as a drawing, or you could do it as a watercolour. If you enjoy drawing architecture, it's a lovely photograph to work from to get the architecture of both the foreground bridge and the bridge behind. So it's, you know, it's rather, like I said, a complicated picture, because you've got the bridge behind coming only halfway across the foreground bridge, and then the reflection of that underneath. So there's a lot going on there to look at. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there are a few things I would do differently, and that's the same whenever you do any painting, and we're learning all the time, and I think with art we never stop learning. And if you're cautious about using oils, you never used them before, I like the Nike saying, just do it. You'll see that on a lot of people's gym wear, just do it. And I think it's exactly the same with art. Just have a go and get stuck in, because you're not going to learn otherwise. You need to just keep having a go, whether it's just with your sketchbook, with your pencils, or with your watercolours, whatever media you decide to work in, just get stuck in and have a go. So the things that I would change about this so that I wouldn't do the same next time, I think I needed to pay a little bit more attention to the drawing of my foreground bridge actually. Those of you that are architects looking at it, you'll probably say, oh, she's got that a little bit wrong. So that was one thing, but obviously I did it quite quickly, and you get a bit more life in when you work like that. So you're always balancing between the two, getting it completely photorealistic or having it being a little bit more fun and loose. So that, you know, we can forgive that a little bit. So the other thing I would change, I would probably let it dry off a little bit before I did those trees. And again, the trees want to be better drawn. My trees look a bit like reeds, and I've mixed the colours a little bit too much. The sky colours have come down into the branches. It doesn't really matter too much, because we have got a lot of light and shade going on in those trees because of the sun shining through the branches. You've got a lot of very dark areas and a lot of lighter areas, and that's what you need to go for, is getting those tones in, to getting the feel of the trees there. But again, I would perhaps let the whole thing dry a little bit and then put the detail of the trees in, and then I could maybe put extra detail of some of those reflections in the foreground. So put perhaps a little bit more detail right at the foreground at the bottom of the picture there. Again, I would change the colours. The colours weren't perfect, or a long way from perfect, should I say. But like I say, I just set off to do it without much thought to the colours and things, just having fun following this little paint picture. And what my intention when I set off was to actually try and simplify it quite a bit, because like I said, it's so complicated. But I might do it again another day in a fine liner and get lots of that detail and lots of that detail of that towpath going around the corner and through the bridge in the background. Okay, so I'm hoping you found that useful. Even those of you who don't want to work in oils, I'm hoping you find something useful in that. And feel free to go and download that photograph. It's on Pixabay. The link's there. Like I say, you don't have to do the whole thing. You might just want to have a go at drawing the bridge. You might want to have a play with your watercolours, trying to get some of those lovely reflections. There's all sorts of ways you could start and tackle this lovely photograph. So once again, thank you for joining me today. If you've any questions, if you want to put those in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And those of you that are new to the channel, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. We're here every Monday and Thursday afternoon with a variety of demonstrations, tutorials in all sorts of different media and with different subjects. And if there's anything that you would particularly like me to do, if you want to pop that in the comments below, I'll get on with that as soon as possible. In the meantime, enjoy your painting and drawing, and bye for now.